if anyone is uniquely qualified to deal with the circumstances that we're currently dealing with the global pandemic, I would say it's a lifer. We certainly know a thing or two about isolation.
I'm Alicia Stevenson, and I just got lessons from a lifer.
I had a life sentence. I know what it means to be unseen, to be the only one in the room who believes in you. My inner work cultivated the attunement within that countered all of that. This is the focus of Lessons from a Lifer. I want to transform lives and demonstrate that we all have more in common than differences. So I want to thank you again for having me, and I look forward to having this conversation. And today we are going to be dealing head on with the circumstances that we're facing right now.
Yeah, I was going to ask you how this isolation that we're all having to face right now with ourselves and globally, what you've experienced in your life, is there any parallel that you see that you can impart to people that haven't experienced it?
What most people don't know is that we spend years in there training and writing essays and studying things of that nature, like how to survive in environments and situations such as a prison.
Yes, but you're not being trained for human contact, right?
No, absolutely not. So
Yeah.
what we call it Riot Mentality. Basically, it is a conscious, eventually conscious, continuous state of mind that allows one to exist in circumstances such as these without having the normal breaks that some people would have in these kind of situations.
When you say breaks, what do you mean by that?
Eight of the years that I was incarcerated were spent in Pelican Bay's Supermax solitary confinement unit, which essentially means that I spent about 8 years of my life in a hole and under attack by use of sensory deprivation. I was probably around 23 or so.
That's when you started?
When I started, and I was in my early 30s when I came out of it. We are talking about an environment in which one does not have direct sunlight, never feels actual sunlight on their skin, is not allowed to have contact with another human being physically, and is quite often mostly surrounded with silence. It's a very quiet place in there. And so what that does is it can really start to attack your mindset. And I actually witnessed perfectly sane people go crazy in there all the time. It very much is torture.
Yeah.
In those circumstances. Now, how does that apply out here? Well, what we are going through, I would say right now, is sort of like a light version of that. Only we're doing it in order to protect each other from contracting this COVID-19.
Yeah, but I think a lot of people, this is extreme for a lot of,
Yes.
experience. For me, I'm okay because I love living alone and being out in nature and quiet, so it's
Right.
not a huge adjustment for me, but people that are much more social.
Right. And I agree, like everyone's circumstances are different in relation to their perspectives on how they view and respond to stimuli.
Yeah.
So this lockdown, isolation, is not as dramatic for me. There are times when I was on lockdown, in real lockdown, when I wish I could have walked to the store or went for a jog or exercised.
This is still freedom for you.
Yeah, exactly. And then for others, this is an attack on civil liberties. This is like martial law is in effect. What I think would be helpful for people out here is to know a little bit more about Riot Mentality and how that works for us in there. When you think about the name Riot Mentality, your mind probably goes to violence first.
Yeah,
You think of a riot.
for sure.
Bunch of people fighting a bunch of other people for a sustained period of time. That's natural. That is what a riot is. But riot mentality is actually maybe about 1% into that violent arena, and it's 99% nonviolent. It's 99% perception. But it really comes down to focus, perception, and awareness at the highest that you can maintain that at. And that's really what helps you to cope in circumstances such as these. A lot of time that was spent in that stillness and in the quiet, it sort of makes me think about what's happening out here right now in society. Like, all of us have, like, collectively are holding our breath right now. And we're all in the stillness and we're all in the quiet. We don't know what tomorrow is going to bring.
And we don't know when it's going to end.
We do not know when
Did
it's
you
gonna
know
end.
when your time was going to end?
No.
Your 8 years?
I had no out time. It was very uncertain, just like this moment is right now.
How do you keep your sanity?
This is where Riot Mentality kicks in, because it's very easy in confusion and in chaos and in uncertainty to start to give in and be overwhelmed by feelings of panic or fear or distrust or suspicion. That is actually counterproductive to what Riot Mentality is about, because it doesn't help you to survive. It doesn't help you to move forward in any way. It doesn't help you to adjust or pivot. And so what we train to do in there is, in moments like this, to embrace that quiet, to embrace that stillness, and actually focus and change our perceptions.
That's all we can have control over,
It's
right?
all we have control over. The thing is I can allow panic to consume me, or I can make a choice in the moment to surrender to it. I can accept the fact that that happened. There's nothing I can do about it. If I stay focused and shift my perception a little bit, then that allows me to see the problem and then problem solve it.
Is it about being really just present with yourself in the moment? Is it about being there for others around you in that moment? Is it us all trying to still stay connected?
Yes, I think so. So before I get to that, because I definitely want to have that conversation, which is at the heart of what I'm trying to say here. You also had your own experiences. In relation to that experience that you had, to what we're going through right now, what did you have to do to get yourself to where we are right now and to this moment?
Whew.
Why don't we reiterate what exactly did happen and how you came to this point from that point?
Not to not answer the most immediate loss in my life and having to adapt to that, but going back to my my more original violent experience that I felt like I had to, being personally challenged, was I lived through somebody being very violent with me. Over the span of 2 years, I was beaten and raped by a stalker, and I finally fled that. I was able to escape and change my life completely. And then 2 years after that, surviving that, I was attacked in Hollywood and brutally beaten by strangers. And I felt really angry, and I bought a gun and I carried it with me, and I was really bitter for a really long time until losing all my home and everything, all my belongings and all my family history in the fire. I had to discover who I really was, and I had to learn to love the people that had done me wrong and see it as an opportunity for forgiveness and love. And that changed my life. Were those moments of realizing these people that I didn't know that were attacking me, they had hard lives.
Yeah.
I don't know their stories, but they have to live with themselves every day. And I get to choose whether I love them and I'm free of that trauma, or I can carry it with me for the rest of my life. And then to face losing everything material in my life, I had to figure out, who am I really? What's my identity? I'm not the beautiful home I have. I'm not my stuff. It was shed unexpectedly, but I found humility. Like, I'm not the victim. I'm not the good person above the rest of the world, you know? I'm connected to everybody. And that's what got me involved with working in prisons, was because I have more in common with these people than I thought I did. They are just the yin to my yang. If they suffer, I suffer. And the proof of that was, being attacked. And, these are humans that are suffering.
Right.
So now, with this, it reminds me of, losing everything, but knowing I need humanity. I need people.
Now more than ever.
Yeah.
I mean, that's such a powerful share. I mean, honestly, from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for having the courage to be vulnerable in this space.
Thank you.
And to share that with us. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Artie.
Yeah. Love you.
I wish I could hug you right now.
I want to kind of go off what you just said, because it's very true. This moment right now that we're living in, we can choose to see this as an opportunity for ourselves. Someone asked me, when I think of riots, I think you guys go in there and you have weapons and stuff, right? And I'm like, yeah, well, these days I like throw flowers at people, but but they're like, in what you're talking about today, like, what are the weapons that we need as a society, as a community right now, in this riot that we're in, right? This external circumstance that has us all in this moment. The greatest weapons that we actually have at our disposal right now are love, compassion, and empathy. Now is the time for us to seize this opportunity to love one another again. Now is the time for us to be compassionate and to be empathetic and to know that others around us are suffering. And now is the time for reconnection. Now is the time for forgiveness. The forgiveness that you talked about. You mentioned humanity. It actually makes me think of something that quite often happens in prison after a riot is over. Most people are down on the ground. People are hurting. People are scared. And it's like a release of that energy turns into humor. All of a sudden, there's people telling jokes, and
While you're still on the ground?
while you're still on the ground, and people are burning from mace and
Wow.
recovering from wounds, and people are just joking with each other. In that moment, there's something about it that makes me feel compassion, even for the enemy I was just fighting with. And as we're on the ground, it occurs to me that I know you. I know something about my enemy. So in that moment, I let my enemy know, I know that you don't have anything. So when we get to the hole and we get our property, I have some stuff I'm going to send to you.
Why then?
No one would ever admit this, but in that moment, you really genuinely feel so connected to this person, and you have a sense of their humanity.
Because you're both vulnerable lying on the ground?
We're both vulnerable. It's just a genuine example of like compassion during these times.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if we are Democrat or Republican, or what our political or non-political beliefs are, what our religious, spiritual beliefs are.
Or gang affiliation.
Or gang affiliation, right? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to the virus. None of that matters right now. What matters is that people are suffering, people are scared, and if you can have a sense of their humanity, then we can show compassion to each other. We can be kind to one another.
How do we tap into that?
I use a lot of inner self-talk. It's usually very positive, it's very intentional. In other words, I take the time to reconnect with myself every day.
I'm thinking that what you're saying with this disconnection, that fear and resentment come when we're disconnected, and it's a disconnection from self.
Yes.
So how can we have compassion for others if we're not connected with ourselves?
It's self-care.
Yeah.
The actual riot is actually an extreme example. But what the similarities of what we're experiencing out here right now are chaos, a little bit of chaos, some uncertainty and some fears. And isn't that the best time to like really tune in with yourself and learn to love yourself, and then go forth and like show that to other people?
Yeah. Well, compassion, I also think we have to allow ourselves to be vulnerable enough to feel for somebody else.
Right.
And that, to me, vulnerability is the biggest act of bravery.
For sure.
Because we're allowing to experience what someone else is feeling.
Yes.
And we're letting them in.
Yes. Vulnerability takes so much courage. It really takes a lot of courage to accept circumstances as they are. And not only that, but to rise above that and come into the space with that much love and compassion.
Yeah.
And forgiveness.
Yeah.
How have you been able to come through these circumstances and yourself still be able to have compassion and empathy towards people around you?
Through learning how to love myself. I didn't learn that growing up. I can only give it if I have it myself first.
Yeah.
You know?
So in this moment, I think now more than ever, like, we are presented with an opportunity for a more positive perceptual realignment.
I realized that I was angry and I wanted revenge and all that. And then I realized it's not personal, and I have to create my own happiness. Happiness does not find me. It is work every day. It isn't, oh, that person just happens to be happy and good-natured and love everybody. It takes work. Eventually it may become habit, but we've got to start. You know, we got to take the baby steps forward, and it isn't easy to get out of that resentment and anger and bitterness. I clung to that really hard for a long time. It kept me righteous. It kept me better than who harmed me. And I'm not. That was what on a spiritual level, I feel like we're all God's creatures. I'm no better than the person that attacked me. I need my lesson.
Yeah, I mean, that's powerful. And you're right. The world can be so busy. We never have time to just sit down and sit still and actually do that work. I believe that I'm being presented with an opportunity here to do just that. And that still allows me to love myself and to take care of myself and to hopefully come out of this a better person than I was before we went in.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. One of the things that I wanted to speak about was how to handle isolation, because I'm pretty much an expert on isolation. What we do is we create and develop a program for ourselves, a daily program, and it's simple stuff. You wake up, you brush your teeth, you wash your face, you start stretching out, and you exercise. After you exercise, you shower. Then you sit back, maybe you have breakfast, you relax for a little bit, and then maybe you start to read. Maybe you finish that script you've been working on. But these are the things that you focus on as your program. And it's just a daily program that you're on, and every day you start and you go again. And now is the time to deal with isolation in terms of we could be so productive right now.
Yeah.
There's so much we could be doing at home that we never get a chance to do. I mentioned the script thing, but there's more than that. Now is the time to allow yourself to be expressive and creative, and that's all a part of positively shaping the moment.
Yeah.
And it allows you to cope with isolation, because what is isolation? It's isolating, and it makes you feel solitary, and it makes you feel alone, and it makes you feel like you don't have anyone, or, it can make people feel that way. It can also make you feel like you're in a rut and you can't move and there's nothing to do. And when you're lethargic, just humans in general, when we don't have stuff to do or create and we're not out there moving and shaking, we're depressed.
Well, and we've been so programmed. I go to work, I come home, and once that's taken away, then who am I? What do I do with myself? I've never had to plan my whole week, or, without the rest of the world, responding to me, right? How do we create our own world? This is a new challenge.
Certainly.
Yeah.
And I really feel like we can just, if people are going to watch this and they're going to say, well, how can I cope with isolation? Take it from a lifer who spent years in solitary confinement. Create a program.
Yeah.
Do it now.
Yeah.
Start doing it every day. Trust me, it's what keeps you sane. I saw many people go crazy in there, and the only reason I stayed sane was because I stayed focused and I kept to my program. What do you think you got out of this conversation?
I got so much out of this conversation, Artie. This is so important for people to hear your perspective on what it is to look inward. The greatest gift we can give ourselves is to see, who am I? What is my volition? What is it that I like? Who am I really in this quietness? Because it can be scary to have to look inside and wonder who we really are. We're left to discover that right now. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
That's
for
amazing.
that.
Thank
That
you.
helps me a lot. I'm Alicia Stevenson, and I just got lessons from a lifer.